Hey everyone, it's Lindsay with When Nerds Attack with our 6th episode of Dreadfully Yours with episode 6 of Penny Dreadful, No Beast So Fierce. Sorry guys, I know it's a day late. I had a really bad migraine at the earlier part of this week, so it kind of backed me up on everything else to get up on the website, so that's why I'm late on it, so I apologize. So, let's get right in on it. I'm sorry if the lighting's kind of bad today. It's really sunny out, so my normal area is going to be a little sunny. See, it gets really sunny right about here, so I'm going to be a little slouchy to keep the light from being a bother. So, let's get into the title right away before I even get into what happened this episode, which, wow, some serious stuff happened. So, the title of this episode, which is No Beast So Fierce, comes from Richard III, which is a Shakespeare play. And the full line is, no beast so fierce, but knows some touch of pity. And basically the line means that even the fiercest wild animal has some touch of pity. Basically, even the most base creature has some touch of humanity within them. So I think that's really interesting to note, considering what we're kind of dealing with in this episode. And I think it probably applies to the two men in Vanessa's life. I think that the title probably applies to Ethan and also applies to Dracula. While some people might debate with me that it might just be applying to Ethan because of what happens in this episode and what he ends up ultimately deciding at the end of this episode. I think there are some aspects of what we see in Dracula and what we see in Dr. Sweet that leads me to believe that there is some aspects of him that lend to the no beast so fierce but knows some touch of pity aspect as well. Though, for the most part, I think it probably is it is applying to Ethan for the most part, given what he ends up making, the decision he ends up making at the end of this episode, which we will get into at the very end. So, we will focus on London at first, as what I want to do usually. We'll focus on Vanessa at first, since she is back. She is back this episode, yay! So, we'll focus on London. So, let's start out with Dracula and Vanessa's storyline at first. So, we see Dracula asking Renfield about Malcolm and asking where Malcolm is at this point. So, we find out that Renfield does know about Malcolm and where Malcolm is in America, and that he's on a mad hunt for Ethan over Vanessa's old love, the wolf, as he says. And of course, I'm pretty sure from what we know of Dracula, he probably knows who the wolf is. Not only does he probably know who Ethan is, he probably knows that it's the Wolf of God, because of his brother, Lucifer. And he also tells Dracula that Vanessa knows his name. Not Dr. Sweet, of course, but he knows the name Dracula. Or she knows the name Dracula. So, Dracula says that soon she's going to come to him and that they need to prepare. All the while this is going on, all the vampires are feeding on this body that's being hung up on meat hooks. And it's just such a visceral, atmospheric scene. It reminds me of something out of Hannibal, and it made me miss the show. But it's something very, very Hannibal-ish, and all these vampires are feeding. And Renfield is so pathetic and really wants to feed and asks his master, "Oh, I want to feed. Will you let me feed?" And with one little twitch of his finger, he gets all the vampires to scatter. He doesn't have to say anything. He just a little twitch. And all the vampires scatter, and he says, "You are my chosen one, and let's Renfield feed." I think that's, again, a really good showing of how powerful Dracula is and how much ability he has to control all of these vampires. And again, it shows how big his coven is at this time. And then we focus on Vanessa, and we find out that Sir Lyle my darling Sir Lyle, one of my favorite characters on the entire show, is being sent off to Cairo, Egypt. He is being sent off mainly because of what happened in last season. Last season, we know that he was being blackmailed for being a homosexual by the witches. And the witches had known of his dalliances with men and had been blackmailing him to feed them information about Vanessa. And he basically had decided that, screw it, I'm not going to do this to Vanessa anymore. Saw the consequences, and these are the consequences of his actions now. So he is being sent off to Cairo, but he says it's not that bad. You know, they accept him more for who he is at this time period in Egypt. He, interestingly enough, says that he's going to go try to find Imhotep's tomb. So, time for a history lesson and a little bit of backstory. So I know a lot of people were really, really excited when he mentioned Imhotep, because Imhotep is the name, obviously, if you've seen The Mummy, Imhotep is the name of the priest from the original Mummy in the Universal films from the 1920s, 1930s, The Curse of the Mummy, things like that, and from the Mummy movie that we all know and love with Brendan Fraser. And yeah, I know. We really, really love that. And the original Mummy movie actually follows the Brendan Fraser version, sort of. Close enough, actually. It's not terribly far off. I mean, it sticks to the Imhotep was a priestess who fell in love with the pharaoh's mistress, his wife, and for that he was doomed and cursed, and then they raised him from the dead accidentally, and there was, all about reincarnation, things like that. So it actually would fit very, very well into this show. I don't know if they're going to go there, if they get a fourth season. It would be very interesting if they did. I would love it if they brought in the mummy aspects, mainly because this show does bring in a lot of Egyptology and Egypt elements. But we already have we already know. It would be really, really interesting considering we have Amunet being brought up with Vanessa and the reincarnation stuff, so it would be very interesting to bring in that aspect. I don't know if they're going to go there, but it is an interesting thought. To talk about the historical Imhotep, he was one of the few commoners who was ever actually accorded divine status after his death. So he actually became a mythical figure after his death. His tomb, basically, his tomb has yet to be found. Like, we still don't know where his tomb was found. So, sadly, I don't know. Maybe, maybe Sir Lyle will find it. It'd be nice if Sir Lyle found it fictionally, because we have yet to find it in real time. We've never found it yet, which is really interesting. He is responsible for the first known use of stone columns supporting a building. He also was a major figure in Egyptian medicine. So he basically was one of the first people who started using medicine without magical thinking. So he started figuring out how people got concussions, how to treat people with fractures and things like that without using pure magic and relying purely on their religion. While he believed in the religion, he also believed strongly in medicine, and he tried to rely on the medicine first before he relied on the religion. And 2,000 years after his death, Imhotep's status was raised to that of a deity of medicine and healing, which I think is really interesting. And so what is really, really interesting is so that his name is the one that is used in the Mummy movies as this evil. He's the antagonist of all the Mummy movies. But from all my readings that I've ever done throughout the years, because I'm really, really into Egyptology and things like that. I actually took an Egyptology class when I was, did an Egyptology minor and just stuff like that when I was studying in England at the British Museum. He actually was a pretty okay guy. Like, from all the readings that we have of him, he was a pretty upstanding citizen. Like, everybody really, really liked him. And he, for the most part, didn't really clash with anybody and was raised up to a deity and was considered a very revered figure. And then the Universal Studios got a hold of him, and he's become, this antagonist, when in fact, like, in their culture in, ancient Egypt, he would have been the protagonist. So it's very interesting to see it in that light. So I would be very interested to see what John Logan and Penny Dreadful would do with him if they decided to bring him into the show. So that's my little history lesson and culture lesson on Imhotep for you guys. So they don't really know. Sir Lyle doesn't know if he's ever coming back, but he basically tells Vanessa to think of him only when she's dancing, and she says that she'll have to dance more often. It's clear that he's still really, really worried about her, and he gives her a name of someone she can go to if she's having problems, if there's someone that she needs to talk to about, problems with the demi-monde, things that are going on with her, because she obviously doesn't want to trouble him. She is not wanting to trouble him with whatever's going on, and she thinks she's okay. And she's obviously not. We know she's not, but she thinks she's fine. But she doesn't want to trouble him with it, because he's not going to be able to help her anyways. He's got to leave. So she doesn't trouble him with it, but he gives her a name. And I'm really sad to see him go. The actor had to leave because he had a lot of theater engagements this year, so he wasn't going to be able to be on the show as much. So I don't think this is going to be the last we see of him, but he couldn't be on the show as much this season. But Sir Lyle is one of the most pure characters on this show, and his love and care for Vanessa is one of the best things to be on this show, even with the blackmail. Like, he has always chosen Vanessa and other people over his own self-preservation and his own self-worth, and I just think it's so important that he exists, and he's so great, and he always brought so much comedy and warmth and love to this show, and I'm sad we're losing him in this season, so hopefully he'll be back and doing awesome Egypt things. So Vanessa ends up going to see Katerina, who is the person that Sir Lyle gave her the name of. Katerina is fencing, being like a cool ass woman chick. Her clothing is completely anachronistic, for the record. The clothing on the show is never completely correct for the time period, but I kind of have let it go. I had to let it go after Dorian's clothing was completely bizarre and his hair was completely wrong. I've let it go after 3 seasons. But she basically studies death. She studies death rituals and death culture and things like that. Totally a Vanessa's alley. Vanessa is obviously so enamored with this woman immediately. And so am I. Like, she just seems really, really neat. And their banter is just great immediately, like, straight off. And it's great to have another female character on this show. There aren't a lot, obviously. Like, we've, so far, really this season, it's just been Lily, Hecate. I know someone in the comments told me how to pronounce her name, and I've already forgotten. I apologize. Hecate and Vanessa and Lily. There we go. But their banter is great, and I'm so here for it. Katerina is just amazing. I'm so excited. And she basically starts telling Vanessa about Dracula, and that he was the Dracul, and he's from medieval times, and he was the founder of this dragon order in Romania. And he's around from the 13th century. And from myths, he started a war between the 2 great empires, the Ottoman and the Holy Roman Empire, and because he wanted everything to be wet with blood. So a little bit of I did a little bit of digging in. From what I can tell, they are talking about the Ottoman Habsburg wars that were fought between the 16th and the 18th century. These wars were fought for almost 300 years, 265 years to be exact. Like, these wars went on forever. Like, from So again, from the 16th to the 18th century. So that's from the 1500s to the 1700s for people who don't like the centuries thing. So, yeah, so for 300 years. So if he wanted things to be wet with blood, like, that certainly would do it. And the history of the Ottoman and the Habsburg wars is, like, really, really, really long. Way too long for this video. If you want to learn more, I'll put a couple links to some stuff in the area down here for further reading if you guys are really interested. But they were fought over, like, a lot of different stuff, because obviously over 300 years there were a lot of different people who were fighting. So historically, we all know that Dracula came from the myth of Dracula came from Vlad the Impaler, who existed within the 13th century, and his dad's name was Vlad Dracul, and was the member of the Order of the Dragon. So, which is basically what she was saying in this. So the Order of the Dragon was founded to protect Christianity in Eastern Europe. Vlad the Third, which is Vlad, who became known as Vlad the Impaler, is revered as a folk hero in Romania to this day, and Bulgaria as well, for his protection of the Romanians and the Bulgarians, both north and south of the Danube. He also raided the Ottomans, which is interesting considering we were just talking about that war. And he, following his raids on the Ottomans, a significant number of Bulgarian common folk and Romanian boyars resettled north of the Danube in I cannot pronounce that word. I'm sorry, guys. I have real problems pronouncing words sometimes. The Wallachia, and recognized his leadership. So he did all these raids. He was basically a warlord for a while, and then eventually became a prince and a king. And he lived from 1431 to 1476, so the 15th century. So they're saying 13th century, they're saying 14th century. It's more likely the 15th century. But basically, that's where the Dracula myth comes from. That's where Dracul, things like that. That's why they're calling him the dragon. Again, there are lots of different... The history of Vlad the Impaler is really, really interesting too. There are lots of different documentaries that you guys can watch about it. Again, there's way more than I can get into in this video. I don't want to make this all about backstory and things like that. And I know that they are also not following that here. They told the showrunners told the actor who plays Dracula to not read Dracula. So they are not following all of that here. So I don't want to go too much into it. I just wanted to give you guys a little backstory on kind of who Vlad the Impaler was, kind of a little bit of flavor of the Order of the Dragon, what the Order of the Dragon originally meant, and a little bit about the Ottoman Habsburg Wars. So he again, Katerina again says that the first vampires basically were flushed with, that he was basically flushed with youth, and was a strategist and a seducer in the traditional sense of the word, which means that one that leads men astray and to corrupt. I think I told you guys some of this in the first or second video we were talking about this. So if you guys want to follow up on some of the stuff I was telling you guys about Dracula in some of the earlier videos about that history, about what the book says about Dracula, go back to some earlier videos. But basically, Vanessa, and she's like, don't, Katerina's basically like, don't, be really cautious and don't go hunting him out. And Vanessa says, I have to know this stuff. I'm being hunted by him. And I think it's really, really interesting that she brought up that word, because she says, I'm being hunted by Dracula. And in the first season, Sir Lyle says, who wants to know they're being hunted by the devil? So again, we're having that parallel running again this season, where they're bringing up things that happened in prior seasons. And I always love parallels like that. So we had that first line in the first season where no one wanted to say, Sir Lyle basically said, don't tell her that she's being hunted by the devil. And this season, Vanessa is openly acknowledging that she knows she's being hunted by Dracula. the sad thing is she doesn't know who Dracula is, and she doesn't know that she already has, like, screwed up. Oh well. Oops, Vanessa. But I love those parallels. So, basically, she says that, you know, she's being hunted and that he wants her submission. And so Katerina says, well, maybe we should just cheat him together. So she has an ally in Katerina. Hopefully. Hopefully Katerina is who she seems. I don't know. I would like her to be who she is, and I hope Vanessa actually has an ally in her. She tells Vanessa that she needs to protect herself and that Dracula will look to isolate her because he's a predator, and that predators always look to isolate prey. So that she needs to surround herself with her loved ones, and Vanessa says, I can't, they're all gone. I think it's very interesting she doesn't think about Victor at all. Given Victor is such a mess right now, I'm not surprised that she doesn't think of him. She hasn't seen him, like, at all. So I don't know how she would know that he's a mess, but we know he's a mess, and so I wouldn't be surprised if she somehow had figured out that he's a mess as well. But so she says that, you know, the only protection is the only protection from isolation is loved ones, and she has no loved ones. So she instead goes to Dr. Seward and starts talking about her they start talking, and Dr. Seward talks about her family, and Dr. Seward basically says that her husband basically beat her, and she killed her husband with a meat cleaver. So that's the person that Vanessa saw when she touched her hands. And I love this story. Like, bless Dr. Seward. Dr. Seward is so awesome. And basically says, you know, hey, at least you weren't alone having a trial in New York. You know, you weren't that isolated. So you're not as isolated as I was back then. And clearly, Dr. Seward again says, you know, hey, there's got to be someone you can go to, and Vanessa's like, no, I don't want to bring him into it. Like, oh, I don't want to bring Dr. Sweet into it. I don't want to bring this man into it. Like, oh, I want to protect him. And Dr. Seward's like, give him a choice. Like, oh, go to him. Go to him. Trust him. And Go to Dracula. Trust him. Let him have a choice. And I'm laughing because, oh God, like, we know it's like watching a train wreck. Like, we know it's coming, and we can't look away. And we know Vanessa's making a poor choice. But at the same time, in her mind, with the knowledge that she has, it's not a poor choice for her. And I know a lot of people were like, oh my God, Vanessa, like, you can't keep your legs closed. But that's not it. Like, here's the thing, and I'll talk about it after I finish talking about this scene with Dr. Sweet, because I have a lot of feelings about this, some serious feelings about this, guys. So she ends up going to talk to Dr. Sweet, and she explains the situation. She says that this thing has been hunting her since the dawn of time, and Dr. Sweet says, you know, he loves these nocturnal animals, and they're the night creatures, and there's a wolf in the background. Like, you need to pay attention to this stuff, girl. And he brings up this bat. And he says that, you know, it feeds off blood sources. It feeds off blood because it can't feed off anything else. It's the only food source that it has the capability of feeding off of. And why am I to think it's evil? And why am I to think that it's horrible? Shouldn't I feel sympathy for something like this? It's shunned and it's alone. And, oh, you know, I should feel sympathy for this thing. But then he says, I don't feel any sympathy for anyone who ever has done you harm. Which, hey, Ethan left her, so I think he's, you know, alluding to that. And Vanessa says, you know, every time I've given my heart, it's led to catastrophe. And Dr. Sweet says, let catastrophe befall us both, which he is talking both as Dr. Sweet and as Dracula then, because he wants that catastrophe more than anything. And he says, I love you for who you are, not what the world wants you to be. And you know what? I completely believe him. Dracula loves her for all the darkness and everything that she is, for that carnal and he loves her for everything she is and not what the world wants her to be. And that's what is so seductive and so alluring and so compelling about him, and why it is a hard thing to not want him. And so obviously she has sex with him, and it goes a little dark. She goes a little dark side, and it's a little primal and feral, but then afterwards she's tearing up and crying while they're holding each other. Okay, so we need to talk about this. So Amunet doesn't come out. So every time Vanessa has had sex, she has had like a possession moment. She's either been possessed or she has had a possession moment afterwards. It has happened every single time she's had sex, except for this time, which means, one, she has it under control, or, well, basically, like, what took place at the end of last season basically has, like, solidified. Her defeating Lucifer at the end with her smashing the doll has, like, taken hold. So she's taken that under control. So she can actually, like, have, like, a sexual relationship and not turn into Amunet, like, which is a huge thing for her. And I think, like, that's one of the reasons that she was feeling such an emotional, like, catharsis. Like, she actually was able to have, like, a positive sexual experience without, like, turning into a demon. Like, she was able to, like, be able to make it a choice on her own without somebody else taking control of her body, which she has never been able to do before in her entire life, which is huge for her. And it's going to be heartbreaking when she finds out that she had sex with Dracula, who has been wanting this for all eternity. And he basically, by seducing her, he didn't take any agency away from her, of course. But at the same time, like, he hasn't been honest with her, so it's going to be heartbreaking. But he accepts her for who she is, in the same way that Ethan had accepted her for who she was. But Ethan left her, and here is someone claiming that he's not going to leave her. And that is a huge thing. And he also has seen her in ways that Ethan never had, like, at the beginning. Like, he seemingly fell for her, like, before she had makeup on, like, when she was at her very lowest. And Ethan saw her at her lowest after she had been, like, pretty and perfect. And, like, he had seen her as the world wanted her to look first. So it's a very different dynamic for her. So she doesn't... From her perspective, she thinks that he is, like, a match for her. Which, really, he is. Because that is what Amunet needs. That is what the reincarnation needs. Like, that is what she was destined to be. She's basically fighting destiny at this point. Like, she is destined to fall. That's what her destiny is, to fall. Like, Ethan is the wolf of God. He is supposed to be protecting her and keeping her from falling. Like, she's supposed to be fighting destiny. Like, it's my personal interpretation that she is fighting destiny with every step that she takes. And that her destiny is to fall. Like, she's supposed to fall for Lucifer or Dracula. And Ethan is the thing that's supposed to be keeping her from doing that. And so, of course, like, when she finds Dracula, it's going to be very hard for her to fight it off. And I don't think that her having sex with him is such a horrible thing, because it's not her making a horrible choice. Like, with the information that she has, she made a choice. I mean, obviously, like, it was a weaker choice because she's in a vulnerable spot, but she's with somebody that she thinks cares about her. Like, obviously, like, he is able to cloak her warning signs because she usually is able to tell when somebody is preternatural. Like, she can't feel that with him because she hasn't been able to feel it at all. And so, yeah, like, she has no clue. She thinks he's normal. So, she has no idea. So, it's not like she's playing with fire because she can't tell. And so, I don't think it's such a big problem. I mean, obviously it's a huge problem, but I don't think she's making, it's not like Dorian, it's not like Sleeping with Dorian, guys. Like, Dorian had, like, warning flags all over the place. Like, Dr. Sweet, it's Dracula. He knows what he's doing. So it's that. It's going to have consequences, obviously, but I just wanted to give my defense of Vanessa in her actions in this, and we're going to see how it plays out. So let's move on to Jekyll and Victor and the Lily Dorian situation. So Jekyll and Victor are talking, and Jekyll has a drug that is apparently, he's going to give to Victor, that apparently will knock Lily out. Apparently would knock a elephant out. So apparently Jekyll is on board with this. Great. I'm so glad you are enabling your friend into kidnapping a woman who, yeah, this is just great. I'm not pleased with this situation. So, Victor goes to Dorian's house and picks the lock and slips inside like an idiot. There's dancing, and Lily is dancing with Justine. Dorian comes into the room and tries to cut in and is told no, and man, does he not like that. He turns off the music and basically tells everyone to get out of the room. So there are all these ladies of the night. I don't want to call them whores. That's just not nice. But they're whores. He tells all the whores to get out of the room and tells Justine to get out of the room, and so Lily and Dorian can talk. And Dorian basically says Justine doesn't know her place. It's supposed to be just me and you. I thought we were supposed to rule together. We're immortals, and Justine isn't. What the hell is going on? Like, Dorian clearly, like, is realizing that he has fucked up. Like, he doesn't have control of the situation anymore, and he has screwed up. And yeah, you have, Dorian. Like, there's something wrong here. And Lily is basically just really, really angry. She starts actually talking about Brona and how she remembers how Brona had been treated and all of this. And it's actually pretty touching, but Lily is just so angry. She says that, Dorian can't know what they've all been through, what Lily's been through, but all of these women do. And Dorian wants them to just go be somebody else now, and Lily just can't do that anymore. And they have this really touching moment, but you can see Lily's just kind of pretending it. But before anything else can happen, Justine comes in with Victor, and she's got a knife to his throat. And Dorian says that you can't kill Victor, we need him. And Lily and Justine is just like, no, I'm not listening to you, I'm not listening to a man, you can't tell me what to do. And Victor is like, I need to fix you, I need to cure you, being pathetic again. And Lily again is saying that I'm not ill. Victor says, I'll take away your rage, I'll take away your anger, I'll make you human, but I like the fact that Lily says, I want my scars to show because they make me who I was. And Victor's like, oh, but we were happy together. Oh, blah, 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 blah. And Lily says, I wasn't happy. I was just waiting for a chance to get away from you. Lovely. And it's just great. Justine again reiterates that she doesn't take orders from any man, but Lily says let Victor go. So Dorian walks Victor to the door and tells Victor that Victor owes Dorian and that he'll call on Victor. So it is very, very clear that Dorian is done with this situation and he's going to do something with Victor. So on the one hand, I like this whole thing with Lily, and I don't disagree with what she's doing, and I think that this whole idea of her trying to rise up and do stuff, but I like the fact that Dorian is finally, like, doing something, because he's been doing, like, nothing, and it's been, like, boring for him. Like, Dorian has always been someone who doesn't sit on the sidelines. Like, he watches, but he also is an active participant in things, and the fact that his place in things has been threatened, and he knows that he could be the low man on the totem pole, and he no longer has control of the situation, and he's going to start acting, like, that makes things really, really interesting now, and I'm really excited to see what happens. So things are finally starting to pick up in that storyline, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. The fact that he wants to work with creepy, misogynistic, like, Victor, like, well, we'll see on that one, but I don't think it's going to go too well for Victor, like, regardless, but I'm really interested to see where it goes there. And I'm just really interested to see where the storyline's going to go. I don't know how long this whole, like, rising up with the horrors thing is going to go with Lily. I don't know how long Dorian's going to want to work with Victor. And still, we haven't gotten very far with Jekyll and how Jekyll works in with his stuff. Is Jekyll going to work with Dorian? Is Dorian, is he going to continue to work with Victor, who treats him like crap? Like, I want to know how Victor's going to work in all of this, because Victor just seems like a side character right now, and I want him to come more into the forefront. He may be saved for next season. We'll see. John Clare, his son is dying. The scene was so sad. So his son is dying, and he finally decides to come into the room, and he starts taking care of him, and his son has his eyes closed and asks if it's his father, and he says yes, and his son says, when I was going to die, I knew that my dad would come to me as an angel, and all of this stuff, and he hugs him close, and it's just really touching, but then his son opens his eyes, and his son just starts screaming, and John Clare runs off and starts crying in an alley, and I called it. I knew that his son would eventually see him and freak out and basically think he was a monster. I'm glad he didn't have a horrible reaction as in, like, try to kill his son or, like, have that kind of reaction. That's a really positive, like, character. He's grown, at least on that part, but I don't know what's going to happen. It's heartbreaking to see that. He needs to go find Vanessa. Like, go find Vanessa. We know that Vanessa and John have this connection now that we saw in episode 4. Like, Vanessa needs John so bad right now. She needs help. Vanessa needs help from someone who is immortal. Vanessa needs help from someone who's immortal. Vanessa and John needs a support structure really, really bad from someone who doesn't look at him that he's a monster. Please, for the love of God, like, Vanessa and John need to have a reunion so that they can help each other, because they both need each other really, really bad. That's what I want from this show right now. Like, I know Ethan's coming back in the next episode because we've seen the previews, but, like, I need my John and Vanessa reunion. That's what I need. That's what I need, guys. So on to New Mexico, guys. On to New Mexico. So we left the episode with Ethan's dad, Mr. Talbot, with a gun pointed at his son. And of course he's not going to shoot his son. And he can't shoot him, and they're interrupted because Inspector Rusk, my little Inspector Rusk, has shown up and states that Ethan's under arrest. They decide to have dinner before his son's under arrest. And Mr. Talbot asks Ethan to say grace. And man, that grace, wasn't it? Ethan was like a little child, like, Our Father who art in cursed be thy name. Like, little petulant child. Like, Jesus, Ethan. Like, I know you've decided that you wanted to be like a little hellhound, but, like, that was something a 5-year-old would write. Like, that was really pathetic and not very, like, scary or evil. It was just 5-year-old-ish. But he tried, and it made me laugh. And it made me laugh. Congrats. Sir Malcolm is still seeing himself in Mr. Talbot and is still trying to get Mr. Talbot to stop antagonizing Ethan, because obviously it's just making things worse. And he still thinks that Ethan is a good man, and obviously Mr. Talbot's like, dude, you don't know what my son's done, and starts talking about that over and over again, starts talking about his his dead son, his other dead son, Philip, his dead daughter, their siblings, their mother, things like that. And Hectate's like, I'll strike whenever you want me to strike, things like that. And the sheriff eventually speaks up and is like, hey, you killed my men on that, you killed my men on that train, and eventually you're going to have to deal with me with that. And Mr. Talbot's like, yeah, okay. And then shoots the sheriff. But he didn't shoot the deputy. Sorry, guys. Really sorry. And, yeah, so that was a shocker. Everybody is really like, well, crap. Except for Ethan and Hecate. And they just decide to eat dinner like petulant children, and so they start chowing down on the food while everybody just sits there uncomfortably. It's the best dinner party I've ever seen. So basically, Hecate, Ethan, and Mr. Talbot start eating. Rusk asks, who summoned all the snakes? And is basically like point blank, like, I know you're all occultists. I know you all have superpowers. Like, I want to know what's going down. And he is just done with this situation on so many levels. And without warning, Sir Malcolm and Inspector Rusk get their guns out, start shooting things. Mr. Talbot and his men start shooting at people. It's a slaughterhouse. Like, guns are firing everywhere. Ethan starts killing people. Hectate's killing people. It's a wild fight. Like, it was a great scene, but, like, I felt like the pacing was off. Like, it's all really, really sudden. And there is a standoff between Rusk, Hecate, and Ethan. And bless Rusk. I love him so much. He kills the witch. He shoots her dead. She tried to go after him, and he shoots her. He shoots her dead, and then Ethan shot Rusk in retaliation. Rusk, you did God's work, and I appreciate it. I know a lot of people liked Hecate. I just liked her last season. I felt like she was ill-used this season, and it was a real disappointment. She ends up saying that hell awaits us both before she dies in Ethan's arms. Again, I just felt she was ill-used this season. I don't think she did anything of much worth besides tempt Ethan. And I think that she could have tempted Ethan in much more meaningful and better ways. Like, I think that even having sex with him, like, again, like, I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but I think that the temptations could have been done a lot better, and I feel like her powers weren't shown very well, and she just ended up not being very helpful, or it just didn't seem to be very meaningful. Like, you were cooler last season, buddy, and I'm not gonna miss you. And I wish your mom had survived, because your mom was way cooler. Sorry. And she dies, and Rusk probably is dead as well. So, goodbye, Inspector Rusk. You were so cool with your one arm. And we go into the church, where Mr. Talbot and a few of his men have holed themselves up. Oh, before we go there, I have to say, so Sir Malcolm ends up in the library, and it seems like he's going to get shot, and Katerina shows up and kills one of the men, and Sir Malcolm gives the best line of the night, and he says, I knew you were too mean to die. Like, thank you. Like, it was the best line. I knew you were too mean to die. Like, I want that on my tombstone. Like, that was great. Even if obviously I'd be dead, but I was too mean to die on my tombstone. So they end up in the church where Mr. Talbot and a few of his men are holed up, ready to ride it out. Ethan explains how they would have been held up in that church, Katerina, and tells Katerina, hey, you were here, you know how this would go down, so you're going to help me out here. Again, I felt like this was a little off pace. Again, like most things have been in New Mexico, I felt like this was off pace and a little disappointing. But it was great to see all three of these characters working together. I was so glad to see all three of these characters working together finally. Like, this is what I've been waiting for since they got to New Mexico. And they start picking people off one by one until it's just Mr. Talbot and Ethan. And Ethan can't do it. He cannot kill his father. He ends up turning away and walking off. And his dad just starts screaming at him that he always walks away from everything. And, while he's doing it, his dad is saying, do it, the devil's work. And just Ethan doesn't. And he made the right decision. And he walks off, and his dad is screaming at him, saying that he's a coward, and he always walks away from everything. Sir Malcolm shoots him in the head, like, hell yeah. And it's great, because Sir Malcolm is actually, it's almost like Sir Malcolm is killing that old part of him. The part of him that was like Mr. Talbot. And it's a great signifier, and that's how the scene, and it's a great ending for that part of Sir Malcolm. My only issue is, did we go to New Mexico just to kill his dad? Like, and obviously, like, we got some of Ethan's backstory, and that's great. And obviously we had the temptation as well. But we could have done the temptation, like, in other ways. We still don't know how Ethan's a werewolf. Like, I'm very, very glad that we got Ethan's backstory, but we still don't know how Ethan's a werewolf. I want to know how Ethan's a werewolf. And next episode, we are back in London, as far as I can tell, with Ethan, Katerina, and Sir Malcolm. And if that's the case, how is he a werewolf? Obviously, he got turned into a werewolf in America. And if we aren't going to find out now, when are we ever going to find out? And I thought that's what we were going to find out this season. I want to know. And like, I feel like that's what we were alluding to with that lady in the cafe where he killed all those people because he was asking about those people that were frozen or whatever. Like, there are things that I felt like they were alluded to that have just been, the balls have been dropped. Like, so I'm just confused. Like, when are we going to find out that he's a werewolf? That's what I want to know. So that's the only real question I have. Otherwise, I felt like this was a really, really strong episode. I'm really pleased. And man, this episode was so good, guys. I'm so excited for next episode too. Like, Ethan is back in London. Yeah. Vanessa's being Vanessa. Like, I feel like Victor has grabbed Lily and making horrible, trashy decisions. I think things are picking up. We are pushing to the end. We've got 3 more episodes left. Things are getting insane, guys, and that's when I love it. So, again, this is Dreadfully Yours, and I'm Lindsay with When Nerds Attack, signing out.